You ever wonder how our market does with the world's market? How about emotions that it has to do with stocks? Safety, growth, liquidity, pick any two. How much risk can you take on? Have you ever wondered what the Phillips curve was and how significant it is? Well, folks, stay tuned because today we're going to be talking about all those things.
Retiring Well, brought to you by Centennial Wealth Advisory, financial advisors specializing in retirement planning and serving all of northern Michigan. Retiring Well, helping you plan for a successful and comfortable retirement. Retiring Well, plan to retire well.
Have you ever seen that soap opera called As the World Turns? Well, folks, as it comes to our markets are very much connected with the rest of the world. We are much more globally connected than we realize. Now, I challenge you to take any browser, your web browser, and go to that financial section where you can see what the S&P 500 is doing, and they show you that chart. And I want you to compare it with another ticker called the VEU. That's Victor Edward Uncle, okay? Now basically that's all the rest of the world except us. Now I want you to compare those two things, and I think you're going to find, no matter how far back you go, that if you watch that chart, our markets are pretty much going in tandem with the rest of the world. Again, much more globally connected than we like to believe. So how is that the case? Well, first of all, you have to understand that 40% of our S&P 500, which is just the largest 500 companies in the United States, 40% of their revenue is tied to overseas sales. So that's why we're so connected. I challenge you, if you travel outside the United States, to go into any major city, look around, look down any street, and you're going to find a number of American franchises. You're going to see McDonald's, KFC, you're going to see Coca-Cola sold, all right? I know as a fact that Apple, 20% of their sales are in China alone. So you have to understand, if so much of our revenue is being generated overseas, if they're having an economic slowdown, how long is it going to be before it eventually hits our shores? Okay? Now, most of us always want to look in our own backyard. You know, we might have a good job, maybe it's a well-paying job. We're feeling very secure about where we're at in this economy, and we look around, we look at our own town that we're in, our city. Maybe we see a lot of construction happening. You know, we just see the economy doing very, very well in our own community and our own pockets, and we tend to believe that everybody else is doing the same. That's just an emotional attachment that we might have, or a belief we have because we're doing so well. But folks, again, I say that's not usually always the case. You know, if they're struggling overseas, you know, how much longer is it going to be before it finally reaches our shores? Right? Now, we have the ability to get behind any portfolio and show you just exactly how much foreign exposure you have. If you have concerns about how they're doing foreign-wise, then you're going to want low exposure to that. Well, we can show you that. So if you're somebody that wants that information, really wants to see how you're set up, then please give us a call.
Every success story starts with a plan. The success of your retirement depends on a solid financial plan. If you are nearing retirement or already retired, we invite you to an informative live event to help you plan to retire well. There is no cost and no obligation, and dinner is on us. We are Centennial Wealth Advisory, financial professionals, specializing in retirement planning and serving all of northern Michigan with offices in Traverse City, Cadillac, Petoskey, and Gaylord. Our presentation includes highlights of the Tax Cuts and Job Act of 2017 and the big opportunity it presents over the next 7 years. The surviving spouse tax trap, how can you avoid it? How two similar portfolios can end up with two drastically different results. What's the definition of a bull market? Do you know your risk exposure? And much more. Call 888-608-5825 to register and choose the date and location that works best for you. Tuesday, March 10th at Boone's Long Lake Inn in Traverse City. Thursday, March 12th at Lakeside Charlie's in Cadillac, or Tuesday, March 17th at Big Buck Brewery in Gaylord. The live event starts at 6 p.m. and is free to attend with a complimentary gourmet dinner to follow, but seating is limited and tends to fill quickly. Call 888-608-5825 to reserve your seats today. There is no cost and no obligation. Don't miss this important live event to help you plan to retire well. Call 888-608-5825 today.
In this segment, I want to talk to you about maybe having too much emotions with the stocks that you own. I think of the story of my wife's grandma. She inherited this stock from her parents. It was Dow stock, and it was all in one stock. It was all in Dow. And she wanted to pass that on to her kids. So what she did, though, is she kept it all in Dow stock. She felt like that because she received it as Dow stock, that's what she wanted to pass on. Now, I had to explain to her that, we might want to challenge that thinking because being all in one stock, if that stock went down in value, that account was going to go down in value as well. She had no diversification. So even though she had this emotional attachment to it because it was given to her and she wanted to pass it on, it wasn't necessarily the best thing for her to just hold on to it. I think of that a GE literally was a rocket scientist for GE, and GE had always done him well. He'd worked for him for years. He'd actually retired from GE, and he owned all this GE stock. Now, GE at one time would be a tremendous company to have ownership in. Of recent years, not so much. But I had a heck of a trying to talk him out of getting out of his GE stock because he had such an emotional attachment to it. Now, did it do well for some time after that? Absolutely. It was a good thing for him. But had he held on to that, again, in recent years, would not have been a good thing for him. I think that individual, when .com was such a big thing, this is in the late 90s, remember, right before that recession we had between 2000 and 2002, and he was hearing about all these .com companies. He got a hot tip on a couple of them that were doing very, very well, but they had no earnings. And I was trying to explain to him, listen, this is not stocks you want to own when they don't have any earnings. And he wanted at one point to put everything in them. I talked him into only doing about 10%. Well, sure enough, what happened? Earnings did matter. That those stocks lost all their value in that recession, and he was so happy that he didn't throw all his eggs in that basket. Folks, earnings do matter. The market trades as a general rule at a multiple of its earnings. Historically, it's traded at about 17 times earnings. So when we see that multiple get a little bit higher, let's say it gets up there around 25, we can sustain that for a little while, and some people will jump ahead and do that because they see the earnings doing well in the future, so you can stand that. But folks, it's not going to be sustainable for long periods of time. Diversification is still the answer. You want to, again, don't want to have all your eggs in one basket. Don't get yourself caught emotionally holding stocks that you shouldn't hold. If you're somebody that has that concern and you want to see what proper diversification looks like for you, then certainly give us a call. We'd be glad to help.
Really good information there, Larry. So thanks for sharing that. And guys, I don't know if you've come across this lately, but this is something that's important to be paying attention to. Is I've had visits with folks just like you that are either in retirement or very close to retirement. And they were talking about their portfolio, and we were having a conversation about the current structure that they have, and then they got into a conversation that they were having with their financial advisor, and how they were saying, well, I'm not really comfortable taking this risk and everything, but basically the advisor was saying, no, you have to take this risk, and you really don't have any other option. And that's something where, keep in mind, this is your money, this is your retirement, and you want to plan to retire well. So one of the things to be paying attention to is how much risk you might be taking on. We're experiencing this long bull run in the market, and it's one you really got to be paying close attention to how your portfolio is structured, especially when it comes to wanting to draw income, right, Art?
Oh, absolutely. When you think of holding these individual stocks, and John, like you talked about, planning to retire well, I kind of find it concerning sometimes when folks come in and I feel like they're spending more time planning their next vacation than they are planning to retire. And you've worked 30, 40 years for this day, but yet retirement may be 30 to 40 years itself. So having a plan to outlive that is really important. Having these high concentrations of stocks, may be rewarding right now, but think back, would you have ever remembered a day, whether you or even your parents, when Sears wasn't going to be around anymore, or when General Motors, fail? When we think down the road, what are those stocks today that are, they're always going to be there? But think back not long ago, there was a time when we thought these too big to fail, or this concept, those are always going to be there. That's what's really important, especially when you're going to be relying on that for income for the rest of your lives.
Yeah, guys, we know diversification is important, but folks, we also want to be careful of having too much diversification. Sometimes we'll analyze these portfolios and we'll see they have like 20,000 individual positions. And what you find when you have too much diversification is you got too much canceling out. You got too many stocks doing well, but too many doing enough, and at the end you don't get any really good returns at all. So always be careful of that. Folks, now stay tuned, because in the next segment we're going to be talking about safety, growth, liquidity, pick any two, and how much risk can you take on, as John was alluding to. So stay tuned. If you're retired or approaching retirement in the next 5 to 10 years, join us for an informative live event. This event is all about you, the challenges you face, and the information you need to help you build the future that you want. There's no pressure to become a client. Our goal is simply to give you valuable information that you can use to make smarter financial decisions. We hope that by the time you leave this event, you'll be one step closer to your retirement goals. Do you ever remember seeing that sign in the store, said price, quality, service, pick any two? Listen, when you're ready to make a purchase, if you pay a very low price, aren't you probably giving up quality or service in one way, shape, form, or another? Think about it. Well, in the investment world, we have the same thing. It's called safety, growth, liquidity. Now, there are a lot of financial instruments out there. I challenge you to put this to the test, but if you look at most financial instruments, you're going to predominantly get two of the three in one way, shape, or another. So let's just run some examples. Let's say you have a savings account. It's at the bank. Maybe it's FDIC insured. All right, what do I have? I have a financial instrument that's safe, right? It's with the bank, FDIC insured, right? It's fully liquid because I can take it out anytime, but what am I giving up? Growth. I'm not going to get a whole lot for it right now in this day and age, right? Take a typical brokerage account with stocks, bonds, mutual funds, right? Now, these are financial instruments that can go way up in value, all right, if they do well, but they can also go down in value, okay, depending on what the security is. So I have a situation where they're liquid. I can trade them anytime, get out of them. I got great growth potential because they can do really well in any given year, but what don't I have? I don't possibly have safety, okay? Again, it depends on what financial instruments they are, but you're probably getting growth, you got liquidity, but no safety. Now take a fixed index annuity. Now this is an insurance product, okay? It's fixed in the sense that it can't go down in value. So it has safety. It has growth potential because the income is tied to some index, so that's good. But the downside is, with most annuities, there's a time frame in which they want you to stay with that program. So I have to give up liquidity, okay? But now, why is this important for you to understand or know? Well, why it's important is because you have to understand which of the two are going to be predominantly most important to you. If it's safety is most important to you, if liquidity is most important to you, if those are the two you want, then you're going to have to make sure that your financial instruments that you're in match that. Okay? If you're somebody that wants great growth potential and don't care about the safety, but you want liquidity, then the kind of financial instruments you're going to choose is going to be much different. If you're somebody that really wants to know how you're positioned, how your portfolio is, then I encourage you to give us a call, because we're going to first want to understand what two are important to you and then make sure that what you have matches that. So give us a call.
Are you retired or approaching retirement in the next 5 to 10 years? Join the Centennial Wealth Advisory team for an exciting presentation with complimentary gourmet dinner and learn essential financial strategies for a comfortable retirement. 3 dates and locations to choose from. Call 888-608-5825 to reserve your seats today. There is no cost and no obligation. Call 888-608-5825.
We look forward to helping you plan to retire well.
Hi, welcome back. Now listen, in this segment, I want to talk to you about risk. Most importantly, how much risk can you take on? Now I just want to emphasize can, C-A-N. C stands for your capacity to take risk on. Okay, now this is where most of us advisors go initially. All right, we want to have some test by which we can determine how much risk we believe you can take on. Some like to use the rule of 100. You know, where they take 100 minus your age, and that shows how much risk you should be in. Okay, so if I'm 65 years old, maybe I at that point should only have 35% of my portfolio at risk. Okay, we might look at your net worth. The idea that the more you have, the more you can lose. Okay, there's all these things that we look at in determining your capacity to take on risk. But what is also important is, again, going back to that CAN, is A, your attitude towards risk. This would be your personal feelings. Now, you know, this is vitally important because I, as an advisor, might determine your risk to be one thing, but your personal feelings might be completely different. You know, what if I am that person that says the more you have, the more you can lose, and I determine you should be able to have much at risk, but you're somebody that's saved for quite some time and you don't want to risk or lose anything. Well, wouldn't I need to know that? So your attitude about risk is very, very important. Now, another place we might go, going back again to that CAN, is N, your need to take on risk. All right, now this kind of comes together when we do income planning. Okay, we're trying to take your assets, how much you want for income. We look for guaranteed sources of income, like maybe Social Security or pension, and then we determine by how much you're going to have to pull out from that portfolio to make up that difference. Okay, well, when we have to put that together in an income plan, what we're really doing is trying to see, will your assets outlive you? Because the last thing you want to do is run out of money before you pass away, right? And it would be nice if you could leave some behind. Now, what if we do that income planning and your need to take on risk is, let's say we have a growth rate of maybe only 3%, and we find that that portfolio or that money is going to outlive you. Well, then we need to ask the next question. If all we need is 3% growth, why are we taking on more risk than we need to? Very, very important. Now, all these factors are going to be important in determining risk, but I would dare say your personal feelings would have to be the most important. So if you're somebody that wants to make sure you're set up appropriately, that your risk and how you feel about it is set up appropriately with your investments, then I encourage you to give us a call.
Once again, Larry, thank you for sharing that information. Really great to be talking about those topics. One of the things that comes to my mind, guys, when we're talking about risk and we're walking through that acronym, how much risk can you take in that need factor? And so often when we're looking at this and we're trying to build that plan to retire well, we're trying to see, okay, with inflation and everything, what do your expenses look like long term? But then how much return do you really need to accomplish in order to achieve your retirement goals? And a lot of times, guys, it's surprising when you do that. You see, you really, you've done a great job saving, and so you don't really need to get huge returns to make this work. And so that's where it comes back to the fact of, do you really need to be taking on as much risk as you might be currently? And it's surprising so often when we run that analysis how much risk people might be taking close to or in retirement.
Absolutely. And if you're sitting there wondering, how does this apply to me? I have this 401k statement with a certain dollar amount. It's important to get an analysis. Come in and figure out, we can help you through that process. What income needs do you might need in retirement? What risk, as John says, what risk do you need to take on? That question I so often am surprised people don't understand. They're taking this risk. They don't really know why. They were told one time to do this, and yet now we're kind of changing gears and heading into this retirement, this preservation of wealth and income phase of our life, and we're exiting this growth and accumulation phase. Right now with the timing of the market and stuff like that, it can be a challenging navigation to do that for you, but it's really all the more important reasons to have a retirement plan. A 401k statement is not a plan. It's a statement. Not all that money is yours, right, guys, if that's pre-tax. And let us walk through that, having an income plan, investment plan, tax plan, what happens when you're gone, an estate plan, talk about healthcare and how that matches up. These are all things that it's important to do so you can plan to retire well. And when we talk about risk, think to yourself, how does that apply to me and how does it apply to my future success in retirement so I don't have to worry all the time about my money when I get into those years of my life?
Yeah, guys, when we're doing that income planning, John, you talked about need, we have the ability to, when we're doing that income plan, run a number of different scenarios. So we'll run a scenario, what if you had just 3% growth? What if you had 7% growth? So we can find out how much we really have to make that plan work. Well, if we do a plan and we find out they only need 3-4% growth, we have to beg the question, why are you taking more risk on than you need then? Unless you're getting too greedy, you just got to be careful. There's risk associated with that as well. Well, folks, stay tuned because in this next segment, we're going to talk about what's called the Phillips curve. I'm going to tell you what it is and why it might not be working anymore. So stay tuned.
Every success story starts with a plan. The success of your retirement depends on a solid financial plan. If you are nearing retirement or already retired, we invite you to an informative live event to help you plan to retire well. There is no cost and no obligation, and dinner is on us. We are Centennial Wealth Advisory, financial professionals, specializing in retirement planning and serving all of Northern Michigan with offices in Traverse City, Cadillac, Petoskey, and Gaylord. Our presentation includes highlights of the Tax Cuts and Job Act of 2017 and the big opportunity it presents over the next 7 years. The surviving spouse tax trap, how can you avoid it? How two similar portfolios can end up with two drastically different results. What's the definition of a bull market? Do you know your risk exposure? And much more. Call 888-608-5825 to register and choose the date and location that works best for you. Tuesday, March 10th at Boone's Long Lake Inn in Traverse City. Thursday, March 12th at Lakeside Charlie's in Cadillac. Or Tuesday, March 17th at Big Buck Brewery in Gaylord. The live event starts at 6 p.m. and is free to attend with a complimentary gourmet dinner to follow. But seating is limited and tends to fill quickly. Call 888-608-5825 to reserve your seats today. There is no cost and no obligation. Don't miss this important live event to help you plan to retire well. Call 888-608-5825 today.
In this segment of Chalk Talk, I want to talk to you about what's called the Phillips curve. Now, sometimes you'll hear about this in the news. It's something that the Federal Reserve used to pay great attention to. Okay, I'm going to first talk to you about what it is, show you, what it's all about, and then I'm going to show you why they're scratching their head anymore and why this Phillips curve isn't holding historically to what it's done in the past. So first of all, what you have here is you've got this line here being inflation going from 0 to let's say 8%. all right? And in this axis, you got unemployment going from 0 to 8%. Now, historically, when unemployment has been very high, we've had inflation be very low. Okay, but when unemployment has been very low, we've had inflation be very high. Now, you can almost plot this, but how this might work is, let's say we had unemployment of 2%, and then we ended up with inflation of 6%. Okay, or let's say we had inflation of 2%, but we had unemployment of 6%. That's basically, they're plotting these points, A and B, and it creates basically what they call a Phillips curve. Now, the Federal Reserve would typically track this because as they've seen more inflationary pressures going up, they'd loosen their monetary policy by either lowering interest rates or putting more money in the economy because they know high unemployment is or low unemployment is going to be on the rise. Now, why is low unemployment an issue? Well, if you have low employment, that means more people are working, they have more monies in their pocket, and there's now what they call increase in demand. And when you have lower supply, that creates inflation because prices start to go up. Now, they don't want prices to go up too fast, because if you have prices going up too fast, now that lowers people's purchasing power, and then that has a negative effect on earnings as a whole. So this balancing act that they're trying to play here is how that's represented in the Phillips curve. Now that's what it's all about, but what's the problem with it? Well, of recent, we've had low record unemployment. I think it's we're rapidly approaching full employment at 3.5% as of the airing of this show, and we're only seeing inflation be about 2%. So historically, we've had this relationship between inflation and unemployment that the feds would work with. Today, it's not plotting according to the old Phillips curve. So some are arguing it's probably not even working anymore. It shouldn't even be used as a guide. But I thought it interesting for you just to know and understand. So hopefully you found that valuable. Again, if we can ever be of any help, give us a call.
Thanks again, Larry, for sharing that information. And it's so important, all these different economic topics to be paying attention to. And that's something that we do for our clients every quarter. We do a market update. And so topics such as that are brought up and discussed. So that way you're staying on top of what's going on in the economy, which is really important when you want to plan to retire well. And so that's something too. I know in today's show we've been covering a number of different areas, but again, very important to be looking at all these other than just one specific area.
Absolutely, John. I mean, there's so many things to watch out there. I mean, we have a whole team here that does that and be able to keep track of that. And as an individual that's trying to balance all that and family and work, it can become complex and overwhelming at times. If you've taken anything away from this show today, you've heard us talk about planning. It's so vitally important when you get near in retirement to have that retirement plan. Remember, if you're 59 and a half or over, you might be able to do those in-service rollers if you're still working, and there's those options out there. So I encourage you to give us a call, visit our website, come to one of our live events that we host, and learn more about us and see how we may be able to help you plan to retire well. Thanks again for tuning in this week, and have a wonderful week, and we'll see you right back here again soon.